line up the left turn lanes a little bit better, and the through lanes as well. You over here where you've got a choice to make one lane or the other, and you don't necessarily know where the car is going to go, especially if somebody's wanting to make a right turn off of 13th Street on a permissive. I put through this in here just to remind you, and most of you have seen this slide several times before, about the traffic volumes we have on the arterials and major collectors throughout the city. And you can see that Canterbury has around 7,500 vehicles per day, compared to 13th Street with 9,000, Hall Street varying up to 11,000 at the intersection of 27th Street. And then just a quick summary on the accident records from Canterbury, averaging about 15 crashes per year. This slide then summarizes or tabulates the pros and cons of the lane reduction, or sometimes called a road diet. As you can see, it reduces speeding because the lead car basically sets the pace, so that you don't have people zipping around on the right or the left of certain cars. And you have the protected left turn lane. There's fewer conflict points. Federal Highway Administration indicates that a lane reduction from a 4 to 3 lane typically reduces crashes from anywhere from 19 to 47% reduction. It's also safer for pedestrians to cross the street because there's only one lane of traffic coming rather than two. And then we talked about the better alignment at side intersections. Now, the cons, there's always good points and bad points. With only one lane through rather than two, as I mentioned, as of being a pro, it's also a con. The lead car sets the pace. So if somebody is driving slower than what other people would like to drive, they may be trapped behind them for a distance. The single through lane has the potential of creating some longer stacking at the signal lights. However, depending on how the left turns work out, that may not be so bad because you still have the same left turn and through lane as you do in many locations here. Because there's just one through lane as opposed to two through lanes, you can also reduce the gaps for entering traffic at times if the traffic is heavy because cars are stacked one behind another rather than side by side. So with that, I guess I'll leave it up to you. If you have any questions I might be able to answer.
So my understanding from, and Toby and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the 3 lanes was written into the contract. So doing nothing means 3 lanes. If you want 4 lanes, then there would have to be a motion to authorize the city manager to amend the contract. So if there was going to be a motion for that, this would be the time to do that.
And I'll move that we amend the contract to go stay at 4 lanes.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs and a second by Commissioner Musil. And what's the flavor of the commission? I think we have some folks in the audience that may want to speak. Do we want to do that first, or do you guys want to have something to say first? Okay, so if there's anybody in the audience who wants to speak, the only ground rules is that you do have to state your name for the record. You do have to come up to the microphone, so no standing in the back, unfortunately. And just to limit your comments, typically we try for 3 minutes, and this isn't super complicated issue, so I think that should be okay. So if there's anybody who had any comments, you're welcome to come forward.
Hello, my name is Ben Tillman. I have a couple questions. Are we, because I saw that we changed Hall on North Hall from 4 to 2. Now it's 3, I guess. Why is the lane changing so important now in Canterbury when Hall was aligned and now it's off alignment even worse? The other thing I have a question for is, have we seen a great accident reduction on Hall when we changed Hall from 4 to 3? Does anyone know any?
I think that it's probably hard to say on Hall. I mean, I sure that there's data and we were sent to it. I can't repeat it to you off the top of my head, but we just did it last year. So I mean, we don't even have the full year yet. I think it's one of those things that probably you have to give it time before you really know.
Okay.
And there's also not a huge volume of accidents on Hay Streets in general. It's like 10 a year probably on average on Hall Street. So, yeah, one's a 10% reduction, but that's going to be a really hard thing to say.
Okay, so then is this, the change mainly focused on reducing crashes, or is this to add bike lanes?
It's not to add bike.
It's not to add bikes.
So then this is only because we are trying to reduce accidents?
There
It's,
can
it's
be-
all the reasons that John just went over. So accident reduction in the conflict points, and to help out with certain intersections.
Better pedestrian safety and helps out with 22nd Street intersection.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the bike lane grant that was passed a couple years ago?
No.
No.
Okay,
Nor did Hall Street.
Yeah.
or did Hall Street?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you, that's all my questions.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anybody else who had any other questions or comments? Sure.
My name is Connie Murmis, and just as a point of reference, I live on 13th Street and have experienced the change from 4 to 3, and am not an advocate of 3-lane because of the longer wait lines, and it's actually much, much harder to get off out of my driveway and onto 13th Street, and if I were Casey's or one of the businesses along there, I would be very against the 3-lane. Just as a point of reference, and it's a very, very slim point of reference, but yesterday I happened to be coming to the north on Canterbury at about 12:30, and there were 8 cars in the inside lane, which could have turned left. Of those 8, only 2 turned left. That meant that 75% of the traffic would have been in the other lane, and therefore, as he also referenced, the stacking. So one lane of traffic would have been carrying 75% of the traffic as opposed to roughly 50% of the traffic as was yesterday. So I encourage you, and he also talked about zipping around, but actually there's a lot of zipping around in 13th Street in the mornings when you're they're headed for the high school and you're trying to turn left to go to the hospital, which is where I work, or into Casey's there, for over a block back towards the west. People are turning their blinkers on, and, you know, even though the turn lane to get turn left is clear up, you're clear, I mean, they're zipping. All you have to do is sit there and watch that people are pulling out a block to a block and a half in advance trying to get in that lane, so.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Sure.
My name is Matt Tottle. I'm a driver for Access. I drive 100 miles a day around this city, and I see all sorts of stuff at all times of the day. It really seems like most of the people who are against this are focusing on school time, like when the school is going in, the school is letting out. That accounts for maybe 30 minutes total out of the entire day. But during the rest of the day, people are, they're going, say if you need to make a left turn on, from Canterbury onto, say, 15th Street or 22nd Street or into the hospital, there are people who will just slam on the brakes and not signal, just stop dead, waiting to make their turn. And people coming up behind them will just veer out into the next lane, cutting somebody off, trying to get around them. Also, when you're trying to get into Canterbury, it's a lot of times, if you're trying to make a left onto Canterbury from any of the streets or driveways, you have 4 lanes of traffic that you got to watch. A lot of times, the two lanes in either direction are going different speeds, so it's really hard to judge a gap. I really think that going to the 3 lanes, even before this was being discussed, I was thinking this would be a great road to do to bring down to 3 lanes, because it gets the people who are making the left turns out of traffic, lets the traffic go through, and it makes it easier for you, for anybody to get through the traffic. And then, you have the intersection at 22nd, which that's just a bonus for having the dedicated lanes. That PowerPoint actually went over a lot of the things that I was going to say, but I really think that as somebody who drives the entire day up and down Canterbury, and I honestly believe 27th Street would benefit from this too. Just because it knocks down the amount of conflict that you have to deal with when you're getting on or off of Canterbury.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope, okay. Any discussion from commissioners? No? No?
That's all, and I don't really have a lot more to say. I talked to Toby and Jacob, today I talked to him. I just don't see the overall gain for as little traffic, for 7,500 a day, from 13th to 27th, and I just personally, I struggle going against staff because these guys do it for a living, and they have all the, to back it up that I'm wrong, what I'm saying. I really struggle. I drive this every single day, taking my kids to school the busiest time of day. And yes, 13 backs up, but honestly, I live all the way on the north side of town. It never takes me more than 10 minutes to get from my house to Hayes High, and it's crazy when you get in there. And I don't see the overall gain. I don't think it's going to kill anybody if we do it. Apparently it will be a little bit safer, but my biggest thing is I don't see the overall gain. That's the only reason why I'm really against this. If I'd seen a huge gain, I was for it on 13th and Hall, and I personally think we have seen reduced accidents. I think I had said it when we did Hall Street. I had a good friend of mine. His daughter was almost severely hurt because somebody didn't see her coming, going north and turned into her. And today I was on Canterbury and somebody went flying around. I think you're always going to have that. People driving, young kids driving crazy. But I just personally don't think there's an overall gain, so that's why I will be voting no for the. Well, I guess the motion is.
For the motion
The motion
to
is
keep it at 4 lanes? Yep.
Keep it 4 lanes. I will be voting yes for that.
I think in opposition to Sean, I think this stretch of road is one that would benefit more than any of the rest because of the amount of left turn traffic and the broad demographic of drivers. We're talking about retirement homes right across the street from the hospital. We're talking about left turns into Via Christi, left turns into the clinics, left turns into the hospital, left turns onto 22nd. Maybe the stretch by Midwest Energy isn't as necessary because most of that's residential. There's not going to be a lot of left turn traffic, but I see slowing down the traffic and reducing the aggressive driving in front of the hospital and in front of all of those retirement homes is a very beneficial feature of this. One of the things that I've had discussions a lot, and several of the emails have alluded to this, is why fix something that's not broken? And there's not like there's a glaring safety issue that there's hundreds of people being injured in car accidents in this. But just because there's not a visibly broken issue does not mean that we can't make it better. And one of the first commission meetings that I sat in on, Henry read an article from, I don't even know what year it was, about the public outcry over bricking the streets.
Yep.
And every business owner in town was convinced that they were going to bankrupt them because they were closing down Main Street and closing down all the side streets, and you couldn't get on, and oh my God, this is going to kill everything. And you know what? We're still driving on the frickin' brick streets. Now, taking it to 3 lanes is not as big of an issue as bricking downtown, but the dirt streets in downtown Hayes weren't necessarily broken. Everybody had dirt streets, not a big deal. but brick was better. And I think 3 lanes in this stretch of road would be better.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to remain at 3 lanes?
I would remain at 4 lanes.
4.
I'm sorry, 4 lanes, yeah, blah, blah, blah. All those in favor of the motion to remain with 4 lanes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 3-2. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Oh, we're
It's
gonna,
a reduction.
we're gonna save $12,000 by saving 4 lanes.
There you go.
Reduction materials.